Acknowledge and thank Friendship Village for their continuing support of our lunch talks during good times and difficult times like the past year. They have stuck with us, and by their support, we've been able to really bring in the best speakers possible for these events. So before we get going, let me introduce to you Mark Young at Friendship Village, who has a welcoming message.
Hi, I'm Mark Young, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Friendship Village in Tempe, Arizona. Friendship Village Tempe is a nonprofit entity which began in 1980 and provides quality residential housing for seniors, along with a wide array of services and amenities. Friendship Village is managed by Life Care Services, which started in 1971 and currently manages 133 communities in 32 states. Life Care Services manages 33,600 beds and employs more than 23,400 staff. Friendship Village is designed to offer an environment that enriches your life. The Village's objective is to offer a lifestyle with services and programs based on your interests that will complement or augment your current lifestyle and well-being. The Village's design allows for creativity and healthy lifestyle activities in a comfortable environment. As a life care community, the Village offers residents a wide array of amenities and services, including the availability of on-site assisted living, memory care, healthcare center, a nurse practitioner clinic, and long-term care if needed. To learn more about Friendship Village, please visit us at friendshipvillageaz.com or call 480-831-5000. Friendship Village is proud to be a sponsor of the Tempe Historical Society and look forward to today's lunch talk. Thank you.
And thank you, Mark. We're delighted, as I've said, to have Friendship Village as an ongoing sponsor. And the residents of Friendship Village, we always welcome you to our lunch talks. We know you've been a big supporter over the years, and for that we are very grateful. So on to the subject of today. You know that this is our sesquicentennial. We're now in our fourth month of the 150th birthday of the city of Tempe, something very special. And even though it's been tough to get it started because of the pandemic, we've got a lot of events scheduled throughout the year, particularly as it begins to come to a close in October, November, and December. So we'll be passing on that news as we get closer to the time. But concluding this series of lunch talks, particularly for the sesquicentennial, I'm pleased to introduce someone who is probably as old as the buildings he has helped preserve over the years. Don Ryden and some people are now beginning to bring him up to the podium. But Don is, suffice it to say, been a fixture in preservation for many, many years in the valley as a preservation architect. He came into existence during the mid-century period, which right now is the hottest form of architecture. I think when Don got started and I was first involved, we were looking at Victorian and turn-of-the-century buildings, and now people kind of yawn at that and are more excited about mid-century architecture. Don went to ASU. He doesn't live in Tempe, but he knows Tempe very well and has done a lot of work here in the city. And I would give you all of his credentials. Needless to say, he's received numerous awards and recognition for his work, and he's really his fingerprints are all over a lot of historic buildings, and we're trying to get them off because we think they're rather distracting, but I'll advise you later on about that. So because of his years in preservation, some call him the father of preservation in the valley. I just call him Don Ryden, and let's give a big thumbs up for our speaker today, Don Ryden.
Thank you very much, Vic. I appreciate that. Great to be here with you today. So many people have the misconception that historic preservation is all about the past. It really isn't. I've worked in it for 40 years now, and historic preservation architects tend to think about the future within the context of our past. And we think about the people who have been here before us, and we think about the place and the climate and the cultures. All of that goes into architecture for the future. Today we're going to talk about some of the mainstays of Tempe, that is the Goodwin family. There's Garfield and Kemper and Michael that we're going to take a look at today. This program was first done for an AIA, American Institute of Architects lecture, put together by the Rio Salado Architecture Foundation. And so today we have a good repeat of it for people who are very, very interested in the Goodwin family, and particularly with their mark on Tempe and Arizona. This is a story about images and insights, the reflections of an architect. These are the very ideas of Michael Goodwin as put together in his memoirs. So I pass these on to you. When Michael was about 30 years old, he was trying to evaluate what he would do in life. And he thought about what he would do if he didn't need to earn a living to support his family. And so he asked himself these two questions. What do I want to do with my life? What will be my pursuit of a meaningful life? Michael asked those two questions of himself 4 times during his life. At once, the answer was to be an architect and follow my bliss and never have to really work a day in my life. Second time he asked, he became a politician to serve 2 terms as a state senator, serving the people. The third time, he became a developer to help remake downtown Tempe as a pleasant space for the people. And the fourth time he asked, late in life, he became an artist to synthesize his lifetime of ideas and images for the enjoyment of people. So, we'll focus now on the legacy of 3 generations of Tempeans that reflect the influences and consequences of their pursuit for meaningful lives. So, Chapter 1, Family Insights and Images. Garfield Goodwin was the patriarch of the family. He came to Tempe in 1888. He came here with his widowed mother and his siblings. He was the youngest of 12 kids. He played on the Tempe Normal School's first football team. In 1898, he played in the first Territorial Cup against some other school, and the Normals trounced the Wildcats 11-2. He became an active member of the Tempe community and was one of the first initiates of Tempe Rotary Club, founded back in 1923. Garfield opened a business on Mill Avenue selling novelties and curios, and he advertised with a totem pole or 2 planted out on the sidewalk in front of his shop. And from where I am standing, if all of you can turn around here in the auditorium, you can look out the back window and you can see those very same totem poles in the museum display area just behind us. So, Garfield was a major supporter of Tempe Normal School, and he, with Carl Hayden, raised money to match federal funds for the school's original sports stadium in 1935. Later on, it became officially known as Goodwin Stadium. He was really well loved by the town and the school. At his funeral at the ASU Lyceum Theater, they packed the rooms and they had to open all the windows and doors to accommodate the overflow of people who filled the streets outside. Grady Gamage Sr., the president of the college, delivered the eulogy. So let's take a look at his son, Kemper Goodwin. Kemper grew up in Tempe, having been born here in 1906. He was gifted with intelligence and energy, and he was anchored in rock-solid values of honesty and integrity. He took many jobs as a high school kid, and he even went off to work in the Globe copper mines in the California oil fields to earn enough money to study architectural drafting at Polytechnic High School in Long Beach. But against his father's wishes, Kemper, at 17, determined to live independently in Long Beach and to finish his senior year of studies there. So they had a bit of a falling out. He was so enamored by architecture, those were the only courses he took, so he could never receive a degree. And he found himself working, decorating department store windows in Los Angeles. And that was his real initiation into the world of design. By the mid-1920s, Kemper returned to Tempe and reconciled with his dad, and he found work drafting at the office of Lesher and Mahoney. And by 1927, he earned his own license to practice architecture. Then came the Depression. So design work declined, and he lost his ability to really make a living here, so he hit the road riding the rails in the early 1930s. For 3 years, Kemper traveled around Texas and the South working part-time for architecture studios. He went around asking for work here or there for a week or a month at a time. In El Paso, Texas, he arrived to find the biggest firm of architecture in town and went to see the principal architect, Percy McGee. When he walked in, he saw a pretty receptionist, McGee's daughter, and she caught his eye. And conversely, he caught hers. Kemper immediately got a job there, and he eventually married the boss's daughter, Mickey. In 1935, he went back to Lesher Mahoney because the firm had gotten a big grant from Arizona State Teachers College to do a flood of new building work. And he was there for a good long while. However, an argument with Mahoney over reimbursement for $5 lunch for a client ended Kemper's relationship at the firm. He left, but was immediately hired by Del Webb Corporation as an architectural coordinator for the buildings going up at Williams Army Air Base. And he tried to enlist in World War II, but Del Webb convinced him to work there for the duration of the war as a critical war contractor. By the end of the war, Kemper opened up his own firm in Tempe. He converted half of his children's backyard playhouse as his studio, known as the Doghouse. Kemper believed that it was his responsibility to actively serve his community. He was on the city council in the late 1940s and early 50s, and he donated plans for the Tempe Women's Club, and the American Legion honored him with the Citizenship Award in the 1980s. In his ASU years after World War II, he created a master plan for the growing campus and developed the utility infrastructure and designed many of the buildings. He has the distinction of having designed more than 60 projects for ASU, the most important of which was the 1956 Memorial Union, which continues today as a flexible, resilient building still serving the school community. As an architect and patron of the profession, Kemper actually loaned money to young architects to help them start their own firms. He felt that underpaid architects were tempted to cut the quality of their services. These loans were his way of supporting the architectural profession in Arizona. He was creating a fraternity of designers. In 1966, when his son Michael was registered as an architect, Kemper turned over the presidency of the firm to him and phased out in a few years. So for Michael, his dad was really the major influence in his life. Here we begin the story of Michael Goodwin, his legacy and legend. Here's his words as an emerging architect. Michael said, "It is my goal and belief that architects should create buildings where we are challenged to think not only how will we satisfy the needs of the client, but also what new concept will this building provide." So as partners in architecture, Kemper and Michael became close friends as professionals, with Daddy working with him side by side. They both lived by the Rotary Club motto, service above self. That belief became central to how Michael viewed his decisions in work and politics. So when Michael Goodwin approached an architectural design, he asked 4 basic questions. What are the space needs of our client now and in the future? How can this project's uniqueness be expressed in a simple statement and simple idea? Something that could be sketched on a napkin. What were special features of the site that influences the project's design? And finally, what can we do to assure that the project will be completed on time and on budget? He used brainstorming sessions with clients and consultants and his own staff so that no one would be limited in their imagination or their sharing of ideas. This provided innovative concepts, but really allowed all parties to be immersed in the project. Michael hired creative and eager thinkers rather than top-notch designers. He tested the job applicants with a fun employment form. I've never seen an employment form that looked like that in my life. It had a nonsense word problem on it to see if they were thinking before they act, a diagram a sentence to see their lettering skills, and to draw a train engine to see insight into their imagination, artistry, and personality. So the new hires started as draftsmen and field assistants to understand how buildings work. And build they did. The Goodwins became the builders of schools. Not that they intended it to be that way, but schools were a solid and dependable project type. They used inexpensive materials and simplicity of design to assure long life. Michael designed about 200 school projects, And 60 to 80 of them were brand new schools in Arizona. The rest were additions and alterations. Each one was a unique design. He believed that a firm was not just one person, but a collective talents of everyone working together in an atmosphere of mutual respect and camaraderie, contributing to a sense of family pride and loyalty within that firm. In the second portion of his career, he served the community. Michael began a political career in the Arizona State Senate through his community work in Tempe. Republicans were looking in Tempe for a candidate for the House of Representatives, and he won his first term by only 36 votes. But learning more about campaigning and dealing with his constituents, he won his second term with 72% of all the votes in his favor. So as a legislator, he certainly learned how to handle criticism. He learned to take risks and propose anything different. Boy, you'll get criticized then. But just ignore the hurt and look for further opportunities to improve. You win some and you learn a lot. In his third phase of life, in Tempe redevelopment, he was equally proud of his work on the downtown, as well as being the architect of the famous Tempe City Hall. So in 1964, he and the Tempe Junior Chamber of Commerce thought it was a good idea to clean up Tempe's crumbling downtown. So they worked with the city and Mayor Harry Mitchell and city manager Ken McDonald, urban renewal director Dave Fackler, and the city planner Terry Day. They put together a request for proposals to redevelop Mill Avenue. For 2 years, no one answered the call. So Michael decided to risk all of his finances and to try making the redevelopment dream real. The city accepted his plans, and they began work on the Mill Avenue shops. He was trying to retain the historic feeling of downtown rather than to modernize it. Red brick became the signature material for the new buildings and sidewalks. Street parking was replaced by trees and planters, medians were installed to slow traffic and protect pedestrians, and innovative signs were encouraged. Now, over time, Tempe downtown has returned to life. As the firm matured, they at one point had 37 people working for them. And they worked really hard for 4% profit. But after Michael returned from the legislature, he talked it over with Daddy, and they recognized that they had to readjust the way they approached things, both in everyone's roles and readjusting salaries beyond the value of industry standards, but towards productivity. Their plan worked well, and the profit of the firm went from 4% to 27%. But business of architecture was changing in the 80s, and oftentimes architects were pulled into lawsuits between contractors, subcontractors, and the project owners as third persons alongside the project. As professional witnesses or as collateral defendants, it cost the firm money being in court and not doing architecture. It got to the point where they were faced with the problem of KEMPER retiring and whether Michael wanted to carry on as a sole proprietor. So he decided, no, I'm thinking not. That's not for me. So he retired to Flagstaff in the last chapter of his saga. And there, Michael wanted to simplify things. His 70s were so overloaded with the legislature, family, real estate, development, and architecture, he and the family moved to Flagstaff in 1981. He tried doing some design-build projects of varying successes, but he really enjoyed doing his paintings and his sculptures. That changed everything for him, and that's how he expressed his ongoing philosophies of life there in Flagstaff, doing his cowboy art and sculptures. Now, let's dive into the architecture of the Goodwins. Let's look at some of their insights and images. We'll go through their work, not chronologically or by place, but rather by the concepts and ideas. We'll look at these projects with as far as a reflection on architectural philosophy, on a solution of the project design statement, and finally the practice, the design process, and the finished building. The concept and ideas shown by the upcoming buildings are about solar orientation and shading. It begins with KEMPER's design of the 1956 Memorial Union at ASU. The MU was the first modern building on the ASU campus in the international style. It was conceived of as a bright family room for students, expressing the optimism of the post-war era, and solar orientation with full glass on the north, horizontal shading on the south, and vertical louvers on the east and west were important in keeping the building comfortable. In practice, the design by KEMPER, the MU continues to be a significant center for the growing campus. And it was, and indeed is, designed to be resilient to allow change as the student population grew and evolved. The 1966 Salt River Project building is a simple organization of space enveloped in an environmentally sensitive enclosure. The cruciform plan, with public entrance and circulation at the center, with wings on the four major departments. Mechanical and electrical systems extend outward from the core. And a fountain and a pool at the center of the building symbolize SRP's irrigation system of dams, lakes, and canals. KEMPER's concept is a very early example of modern Arizona solar-sensitive building design. The 1972 Scottsdale Medical Building is another example of solar orientation and shading. To maximize leasable air-conditioned space in compliance with client requirements, they used the roof of the story below as access to the floor above, thus enabling the massing of the building to be a wedge-shaped building. Evidently, it's Scottsdale's largest doorstop, but nonetheless, the progressively smaller bay depths created suites of varying sizes. Circulation paths run parallel to the long north edge of the building to give fire exits and keep mechanical rooms close to the users. And continuous insulated window walls along each landscape circulation terrace provided views from each suite to the north, minimizing solar heat gain and glare. This was really an advanced bit of thinking, because his design solution was so innovative that the zoning ordinance did not even possess the language or ability to evaluate the building for approval. So it took the city of Scottsdale, from the planning department to the planning commission to the city council to the mayor. It took 1 year to evaluate the building, and finally the city had to change the ordinance to catch up with Michael Goodwin's thinking. So it became a reality in 1972. The next major idea is about that sloping glass and using the building as a heat source for itself. The biggest and best and most famous, most memorable, of course, is the 1971 Tempe Municipal Building. The city council wanted something that would draw people downtown again. They wanted, quote, a lantern for the community at the center of the traditional downtown, which was just beginning to rejuvenate in the mid-1960s. The iconic building responds to the desert climate in an urban context. The inverted glass-walled pyramid is set in the center of a sunken garden. It is symbolic of being at the center of the city. The timeless inverted pyramid allows shading of continuous ribbon windows. John Yellett, the famous solar expert of ASU, turned the building design 45 degrees to the compass so as to maximize the sunlight in the garden and to maximize the summer shade on the sloping glass walls. The setting of the building truly does embrace the visitors. The upside-down pyramid replaced the city hall that had been in place there for 47 years on that site. The firm had come up with 3 other city hall ideas, all of which were discarded by the city council before they approved this crazy, crazy upside-down pyramid. But of course, in the desert, upside-down pyramid is the right direction for the pyramid because it frames and shades the entire building. This design established Tempe as a major innovative city. The city manager thought it was the best decision he had made in his 20-year term. The triangular windows were mounted with solar drapes to trap the winter heat gain, to keep it out of the rooms. And the technical problems were all solved through careful detailing of the building's window glass in the frames. That wasn't the end of Michael Goodwin's ideas for inverted pyramids. Here is a 1965 Saguaro Bank office building done in the never popular brutalist style. I don't believe it was ever built. Perhaps it's all for the better. Another concept and idea is that of light and body heat as heat sources in buildings. The 1978 Liberty Elementary School is an inward-looking school on 2 levels, shaped by the desert environment and the necessity to conserve energy. 2 levels of the classrooms wrap around a central resource center, and the building is surrounded by large earth berms, which bring the scale of the building down. The building has a split-level form. From the street, you walk down half-story to the lower level or walk up half a story to the upper level. The school provides a practical approach to handling heating and cooling by considering how people use the building. In fact, the mechanical engineer George Timmerman developed a sophisticated design to adapt a simple passive energy approach to heat use by actually calculating in the heat produced by students' bodies and by the light fixtures to, in part, heat the classroom spaces. This really significantly brought the cost of energy down in the project. Solar energy collectors really became a thing beginning in the late 70s. In the 1977 Corona del Sol High School, the whole project was built around the idea of full solar energy collection and use. At the time, it was the second largest solar project to be built in the entire United States. It was built on a triangular campus site, and following those shapes, they zoned the school in a way to allow continuous pipe mechanical systems to bring air to the individual rooms. The structural system allowed many variations of room heights and mechanical soffits. A staggered modular grid in section allowed flexibility of room sizes, and flat plate solar collectors served as screens for the rooftop mechanical equipment. This really remarkable project allowed George Timmerman, the engineer, and Michael Goodwin, the architect, to become nationally recognized figures in solar design. Let's hearken back to a recurring theme in Michael Goodwin's quiver of ideas: rammed earth, air scoops, and prismatic lighting. In 1963, he did a thesis project, and it was called an Indian Tribal Center. It was intended to grow out of the desert. It was built with rammed earth wrapping around a central courtyard. And this idea gave him many things that he experimented with in later professional life, all the way into his retirement. Low energy, low tech structure emerges from existing environment to provide tribal administrative spaces around a central gathering place. This was designed for the Fort McDowell Indian community. But once again, this was a school project. It was not actually built. But these sympathetic to nature concepts were used by Michael Goodwin throughout his career. But during the 1960s, the school professors had nothing but harsh criticism for his investigation of vernacular concepts and materials rather than the application of modern materials, structures, and building systems. Michael Goodwin was way ahead of the curve in his professor's thinking. Earth integration was really an amazing idea that he used to the greatest effect. In 1971, Michael designed the Shea Middle School. This thing essentially was a water tank with a roof. It was cost-effective and just right for the desert. It was sort of working on the same principles as a Hohokam pit house, with a sunken floor like a cave, topped by a very lightweight roof, like a bower. The earth berm enclosure met the program requirements, and it provided 40% savings in the building's cost, and it held construction down to 170 days. Caissons were drilled into the berm and precast grade beams were put on top of those caissons to provide a base structure for precast concrete T roof structure. The interior sloped berm wall was gunnited, like a water tank or a swimming pool, and the exterior slope was landscape. They ran carpet up the interior slope as a 3-foot-high wainscot. Precast concrete parapet walls finished the exterior and screened the mechanical units. Those parapets were high enough to prevent the children from climbing up on the roof. So this was an example of an open space school. He was able to bring the project in at a mere $12 per square foot. It was inspired by his thesis project, and the building needed no walls. This school served successfully for 25 years until the district tore it down in order to build a larger facility. (1971) Paradise Valley Town Hall, a whole new kind of question came up from the town council. They wanted a building to serve as a living room for the community, a place away from the sun in which natural materials could be expressed in simple ways. The building reflects a residential image of the town, and it blends with the desert environment and looks out on the mountain vistas. It's a simple square plan, rotated 45 degrees off of the compass, but gives direct views to the McDowell Mountains and to Camelback Mountain. The earth berms mold the building into the desert landscape with low-pitched clay-tiled pyramid roof, completing the simple form of the building. The interior of the town hall emphasizes natural materials and exposed structure of glue lams, steel connectors, and plywood-covered walls. The open plan unites the city council chamber with the administrative facilities, and the outdoor garden behind the council desk lends an atmosphere of informality and charm. Now, here is a concept that escaped me back in the late 70s. It was called collision architecture. Write that down. Collision architecture. Never heard of it. But Goodwin did. In 1976, he was called to design a new church for St. Michael's Episcopal. He came up with a response to conflict between the priest and the parishioners. He came up with this idea of collision architecture to collide shapes in space. The collision architecture for residences in the mid-1970s on the West Coast had forms derived by taking one or two standard houses and theoretically pushing them into another at an angle. And the strange shapes that were formed by this collision became the space of the new building. So, what did Goodwin do? He satisfied both conflicting opinions with a contemporary interpretation of Spanish eclectic style built on this collision architecture. A thrust chancel area allows the congregation to sit more closely around three sides of the altar, and the back wall is punctuated with niches to hold religious icons. Small spaces around the perimeter accommodate the choir, the chapel, and other worship areas. The design collides two traditional cruciform church plans to create a unique, unusual, contemporary worship space. Now, surprisingly, both the priest and the congregation loved the resulting collision church. And he was astounded that at the grand opening and dedication, the priest excitedly explained to the congregation the deep religious significance of the placement of every nook and cranny. But Michael really thought the space had just been created by an architectural concept. Here is the 1969 Michael Goodwin personal house. This is a collision in time. He'd always wanted to remodel a barn so that he could remodel it as his own house. But in Tempe, there were no barns left. So what did he do? He designed a barn that he could remodel into his own house. And so he took the characteristics of traditional barns and made very interesting shapes out of them to form the living spaces and the bedrooms and the kitchens. It was a weaving together of space for everything in the house. Another concept is the framing of hexagon roofs using parallelogram shapes. In 1973, he designed the Arrowhead School and the Scales Elementary School, two new concepts using hexagon shapes as the framing for the school roofs. It became prefabricatable and demountable so it could be changed over and over again. And the floor plans of this allowed for very interesting options for teaching in these pods. So you could have six classrooms within each hexagon, and then each of those hexagons filled in between all of the support spaces around them. It was actually inspired by ideas of beach umbrellas on the beaches of Israel. In 1978, he came up with stackable portable classroom units. These were done for the Paradise Valley School District. These things had to be portable schools. They came up with a 15-foot by 30-foot module of light concrete and steel. These things could actually be put together like Lego systems to create any size room or space that you actually needed. And this was a wonderful prefabricated approach that got schools up and fully designed and built within 200 days. And these portables could be stacked 4 stories deep. The Goodwin firm used this system for the district through 3 different superintendents, and it resulted in 13 different schools. In 1965, they did the Evans Elementary School, the first open plan school building for that district. It was a new exploration of teaching theory. In 1973, he came up with an idea of rooftop parking. By that time, lots of architects had been building boxes on stilts so that you would have an office on top of shaded parking cars. He turned that upside down with this courtyard plan and put the cars on the roof so that the cars themselves would shade the building and thus the people inside. Alas, this one was never built. The Goodwins all worked more and more often at ASU, working on concepts for the 1967 Central Boiler Plant and the 1967 Mathematics Building. Later in his life, he went into thinking more about indigenous architecture inspirations. This was an idea for the high desert house. He said he wanted to use natural materials and natural ways of buildings. That's where he wants to take his work. So this idea had it integrated into the hillside with walls of rammed earth, clear-story windows to illuminate the center of the earth, and the use of air scoops like in 19th century Arizona barns to distribute breezes and blow across reflecting ponds for evaporative cooling. He worked on ideas of a subterranean house. He was inspired by places in China and Egypt where people actually carved their courtyard houses out of the earth, digging a hole and then digging horizontally to make rooms around the courtyard. His idea was to create a fan-shaped house with a shaded courtyard, and the steps of the fan actually were part of the garden plot for the house, and it gathered water from the surroundings and delivered it as irrigation from the tank. He even invented a tent house that was partially underground, and he tried to use modern fabric materials and technology to build simpler and simpler houses. His idea was trying to give you a life in a garden, and in this case, it was a real garden. He looked at concepts for a co-housing community that was inspired by Zambian herdsman villages, where the houses encircle their corrals to create compounds of community living. He dreamed of finding a piece of land where he could do something like this in Arizona to build a community that was self-sustaining. And so, we have some wrap-up thoughts from the Goodwins, their insights on architecture. Kemper Goodwin said, "Of the future, we only know that it will present new challenges and perplexities, new tests of strength and fortitude, and, if we are well resolved, from it shall emerge new triumphs. Perhaps we shall not find either the strength or the hours to perform all the constructive tasks we set for ourselves, but at least we can try." His son Michael says, "As architects in the desert, we must find solutions that respect the creating power of the sun. In the winter, we wish to bathe in the sun, luxuriating in its warmth, and in the summer, we seek dark, cool places. Both needs are significant form givers in the desert. By the nature of how they are formed, they create a dynamic motion within and around our architecture." So, the ideas that I've shared with you, straight from Michael himself, were put forth here, but the beginning, as a beginning and an invitation and starting point from which he had hoped that others could begin their own journeys of pondering, dreaming, and drawing on napkins. Our lives are but brief moments in a stretch of time. We learn each day that we live, and this living can only be best understood when couched within our own stories. The ones that celebrate our successes, the ones that speak to our dreams, and the ones that share our mistakes and vulnerability. Michael says, "I discovered my journey, like that of many others, is a circular one, where what I have learned from the past fuels me as I face the challenges and opportunity for the future." I pray that others will continue with their own exploration and their own journeys, and that together we can begin to articulate what will become a vital, creative, indigenous architecture that showcases the diversity and the magnitude and power of the desert. When I ask myself, what is it I want to do with my life? The answer very well may be to leave a beautiful memory. Well, he leaves with a story and an invitation to us that says, did I ever tell you when I turned the world upside down?
Wow. Quite a presentation. Thank you, Don. A couple of things. Don't go away. Go back up there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. In fact, put on the hat.
Oh.
Because I have an answer for you. Before we went on the air with this presentation today, we were trying to think of another person who wears an iconic hat at various public performances, and neither one, because of our doddering age, I would suspect, could remember. Roger McGuinn of the Byrds, the black fedora. Okay?
All right.
Now, do you feel better? You won't go home tense and
No, I will sleep tonight. Thank you, Professor.
Trying to worry about that. I think one of the lessons we learn about the Goodwins is that if there was one major group of contributors to Tempe and the state, it's the Goodwin family. As you said, Kemper was just one of a number of children, and all of the other Goodwin brothers were involved in various aspects in Tempe, some in political office. James Goodwin opened the first theater in the city, and it was James and his wife that stalled Home on the Range for about 4 years because they claimed copyright ownership of it. And eventually there was a lot of research done, and it couldn't be performed until it was resolved in court, and it turned out they didn't. They had taken it from something else. And I think it was James or Williams that had a trolley in Tempe, a little mule-drawn trolley. You'd get off the train and hop on it, put a dime in it, and take it to the end of the line, which was about University Drive or 8th Street at the time. So getting back to Michael and Kemper, I don't think you alluded to it, but it's an interesting story, and I'm sure you know it, about how the inspiration for the upside-down pyramid came. You want to just relate that?
Well, Michael himself claims that quite literally the idea came to him out of the mist because he was standing in his shower one morning thinking about how is he going to solve this problem of shade and community, and he started just drawing with his finger on the moist glass of the shower door and realized with the water coming down from one side, hitting the door, that was it. It was that angle and drawing a simple triangle inverted on the shower door that was the essence of the idea of the inverted pyramid.
And if he were doing that today, he could have documented that with a cell phone photograph. We only have his recollection of it, but it's a great story of inspiration.
And perspiration.
Yes, perspiration in the shower. I think it's an interesting situation when a father and son go into the same business. You're in the same boat today, if you will.
Proudly.
And I wonder, because the father grows up in a different era, and what kind of conflicts or what were the different styles between Kemper and Michael? And did they ever butt heads about, well, Dad, you know, that's kind of old-fashioned and Victorian. We want something more modern.
You know, I never got that impression from reading up on this or even talking to many of the younger people who had gone through the chalkboard talks with them, because everything was wide open. And because actually Kemper was the man of the modernist times. Michael was the man just stepping out of modernism. And I can remember, well, he was practicing in the 70s. I graduated from ASU Architecture School in 73. We would ask our professors, well, what style are we in right now? And at that time, the professors didn't know. And so today, I think what Kemper and Michael were working on is what has become now called regional architecture that actually is a critical look at the needs and the opportunities of the cultures and of the places. So critical regionalism is really kind of where Michael ended up working.
And the collective span of their architecture is rather remarkable. Right? Over 50,
well, from
60?
the 30s to the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was 50 years of work, much of which was overlapped between the two of them.
And they worked together on projects, they worked independently on projects, and it's always amazing to me that a father and a son or a father and a daughter can work in the same environment and separate family from professionalism. I don't know how that works in your firm.
It has moments.
Come on, Dad, that's ridiculous.
But I'll tell you this, working with my own son, who was trained as a planner, but is kind of a two-gun planner architect, I learned something from Eric every single day.
And that's important. I think all of us need to know that lesson, because sometimes we get arrogant. You know, I've been around forever. Don't tell me. And younger people can generate ideas that we never thought of. And I'm often slapping myself silly. Well, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
And certainly as elders, we can provide some guidance and mentorship. But the world is always moving forward, and it's the younger generation that's going to take over, and if they're well-educated, well-trained, they're going to build on the work that we did.
And two, I find that we spend more time talking about principles and concepts and ideas and cosmic truths more than figuring out how to design the bathroom partition. So it's a little deeper and applicable.
You know, I don't know it must be kind of frustrating for an architect to design something that never gets built, but I guess that's part of the hazards of the job.
Yeah, but it's also part of the beauty, because then you don't have to deal with the risk management and your insurance for liabilities on something. So as crazy as it sounds, some of the best projects are the ones that don't get built because you're not left hanging out.
Well, and then you get people like Frank Lloyd Wright, who designed a marvelous building in Iran or Iraq, and got turned down and said, well, maybe I can recycle that into Gamage. And
That's
so
right.
some of them do come back. Any idea between the two of them how many buildings they actually designed and were constructed?
Well, let's see. There were at least 200 schools, and there are at least 60 buildings at ASU. And then the houses, the commercial, so there must have been way in excess of 500 buildings or more that they put together.
And that represents a rather remarkable career.
Oh, it does. Think about it. 50 years and doing 10 sizable projects a year. That's a lot of work.
And it essentially, they certainly had a lot of help, but it was a two-member firm. Yes. Everyone else, you know, they were doing the designing, but you had draftsmen and others. This was in an era before computers when everything had to be done by hand. And just one other, you know, we all think of the Tempe City Hall as the upside-down pyramid. And I think you showed a photograph that kind of puts it into a context that most of us don't think about because we don't know what was in the mind of Michael Goodwin when he called it the lantern to the world. Mm-hmm. Can you just describe that a little bit? And I think when you go to City Hall, you're going to find that it looks a little bit different than an upside-down pyramid.
That's true. I mean, at squint distance, it is a pyramid, but the idea of having a lantern to the world and the center of the city, those words came from the city council, and he interpreted it. And so I think maybe looking for precedent, he looked at some of the ideas of how cities and temples and palaces had been built, and there is a formula of seeking the site, setting the center, aligning the axes, and shaping the space. And using that ancient formula, that's how he came up with this pyramid. And what didn't get built, what you don't see, is that the axes were meant to go all across town in sidewalk patterns to guide you back to the
sort of like the design of Washington, D.C.
a little bit like that, yeah.
And at certain times of the day, or particularly at sunset, when the sun hits that building just right, it does have a very reminiscent glow of a lantern. Oh, yeah. It's got a very warm tone to it. Well, we're just about out of time. So again, I want to thank you. This was rather remarkable. The Goodwin family will always be remembered, but KEMPER was probably, he wasn't Tempe's first architect, but he certainly was Tempe's premier architect. And Michael followed in his footsteps. And when you've got the legacy of your dad, it's sometimes very hard to create your own niche. But Michael was able to do it. And to see the breadth of both of their accomplishments is really impressive. So again, thank you, and we do have a little gift for you. Oh. Someone told me this was a building that you actually designed. It's called the Hackett House.
Well, I didn't design it, but I did work on its restoration.
All right, there you go. Oh, and I have one other one other regret too, is that as impressive, and it's really nationally known, Tempe's City Hall, there was a sacrifice made that those in preservation are sad about, and that was Tempe's original City Hall, which was a rather remarkable building in itself. And I've always thought Tempe wasn't that full at the time. They could have saved City Hall and built a new one in the downtown, because there was a debate about where City Hall should go, and appropriately it is in the downtown, but it could have gone next door or somewhere, and the historic building could still be there. So I'll get a call from the mayor about being negative, but
that's all right. I have a lecture on the 4 city halls of Phoenix, so we can do that one someday.
Okay, and this is for you also. Oh, thank you. So I want to thank you. Everybody, a thumbs up to Don. I can almost hear the applause going. So I might need to come over all here.
Right. Let me surrender here.
All right. So this, as I said, was our last lunch talk of the season, but we are working to plan a really remarkable upcoming season that will include our mayor, Corey Woods, who is really a fun, dynamic speaker. He's going to open up in October to talk about the sesquicentennial. We'll have a presentation on Hispanic history because long before any Anglos got here, Hispanics were already farming the area, and frankly, the city wouldn't have evolved or been built without the help of the Mexican population. A really interesting figure is C.J. Dyer. You know the map, the bird's eye view map of Tempe. That was designed by a really interesting fellow, and a fellow by the name of Dobbins has put together a really important history of Mr. Dyer. And one of the interesting things that he came across is a photograph. All of these years, we did not know what C.J. Dyer looked like. In fact, he was a mayor of Phoenix for a short term, and if you go to City Hall, you'll see photographs of all of the mayors except Dyer. Well, Mr. Dobbins did some research. We didn't get, he didn't find a photograph later in life, but he did find a photograph when he attended college. So now we've got an idea of what Mr. Dyer looked like. Another presentation for those interested in birding, and particularly with Town Lake, a lot of migratory birds come through. We'll have a presentation on that. And it was so popular, and they so desire to come back, the ASU School of Science and Space Exploration will also be presenting in our upcoming season. And that begins on the second Wednesday in October. That's October 13th. So a couple of other things, just so everyone knows. We are now able to record these lunch talk presentations, and as a result, you'll find them online and archived through Facebook. If you go to the Society's Facebook page under videos, you can see them. And if you enjoyed today's presentation, but have some friends who weren't able to see it, please let them know, because that will be up online shortly. We want to encourage you to become a member of the Tempe Historical Society. Oh no, it's the History Society now. It is the support of the members that really helps us do the things that we do, and we kind of suspended membership during the pandemic, but the museum is open, and all the money that we raise goes back to the museum to take care of some of the needs that the city is unable to provide. Also, we do have a gift shop in the introductory slides, and when we're done, the slides that'll follow will show a few of the items, and I am proudly wearing, I do wear that quite often for Tempe, the Tempe tie, and people always ask about, where do I get that? Where did you get it? Well, it was designed about 20 years ago for the city council, which at the time, I regret to say, didn't have much interest in it. And I knew that somewhere within the bowels of the city, there had to be more of the ties. And thanks to the museum's director, Brenda Abney, she was able to dig them out, and they are now available, just a limited number, in the gift shop. And the ladies were saying, well, I like the tie, but I don't want to wear it. How about a scarf? So we were able, and I am modeling that now, to take what is on the tie and make it into a scarf. And you're going to start seeing people wear that. You will find the gift shop on our website, or when you come to the museum, these and a number of other items for the sesquicentennial will be on display. Let me just check notes. I think that's it. We thank you for sticking with us during a very difficult year. It was troubling for all of us to have to adjust to a new lifestyle. We so love when this room is full of folks enjoying the lunch talks and getting together and talking with each other. And we're really hoping that by October we will be able to do this in person. We'll let you know. But either way, we will be continuing them live streaming at the time of each lunch talk, so even a broader audience can take advantage of it. So with that, let me thank you once again for your support of the Tempe History Society and the Tempe History Museum. We hope that you have a wonderful summer. We want you to keep wearing your mask. Make sure that you're vaccinated when that opportunity comes up. Stay healthy, and we will see you in October. Bye-bye.